Welcome to the JPL podcast for the New South Wales Teachers Federation Centre for Professional Learning. I'm Carly Boreland and I'm the editor of the JPL. Today I'm talking with Eddie Wu and David Watson, and we're chatting about what it's like to teach maths in high schools. And we're going to cross a few different topics, so hang on for the ride and we'll see where we end up. Eddie, David, welcome.
Hi Carly, great to be here.
Look, we want to talk about big things. So there's some changes that have been going on in maths for Year 11 and Year 12. There's new syllabuses. We've had a suite of syllabuses now from 7 to 10 as well. And that's taking up lots of teachers' time and energy and effort at school. But I wanted to start, before we talked about those more pressing things, with what you love about maths and why you came to be maths teachers. And I asked that as a history teacher who would not necessarily feel comfortable in a mathematics classroom teaching it, but I know that that's what you've both chosen, not only to make your careers, but your passion as well. So could you start us off with why maths and why it's a good time to be a maths teacher?
Yeah, I'd love to go first. I became a maths teacher because of my Year 12 maths teacher, and he probably followed on the back of my Year 11 maths teacher. They were just really good at explaining what they were doing. They didn't necessarily do anything that I do now, but I guess they just engaged me in it. They came across as good people who cared about good things, and I guess I developed a connection with them. And yeah, it seemed like something that I'd want to do. But the reason I really want to go first is because it's changed a lot in the time that I've been teaching. The first 4 or 5 years I was teaching at a school, then head teacher at a school. And it's changed a lot recently. And particularly the reason I want to go first is because it's changed since working with Eddie. Eddie and I worked together for 2 years, and in that time, I really reflected a lot on the way that I teach, not just because of meeting Eddie, but meeting a whole bunch of different kids there, and from meeting Eddie and working with Eddie really closely. And thinking about, I guess, why we want kids to learn the things they do, the power of exploration in maths, the beauty of not having just right answers and everything. Eddie and I have done so much exploration of things, which I'm sure he's done on his own and with others as well, but it's really changed the way that I view it. Not that I look back on anything I did in my early years as being wrong, but that I would definitely do them differently now, and it's mostly because of a different focus, I suppose, and trying to think of what we want our kids to become. And I really enjoy how we can relate it to not just maths, and by that I don't mean like getting maths and relating it to a problem that's real world. I mean things like kids taking risks in maths and sometimes their adversity to that, and how that is really very similar to the way that they are in their lives, their social interactions, and so many different things. They relate their confidence to maths so well. They relate their confidence to maths so closely. If they feel like they're good at maths, then they feel very confident in themselves. And I guess I've just enjoyed exploring that. I think that's been a really interesting transition for me.
I think I love listening to everyone's stories about why they became teachers. And David and I, as you mentioned, have worked so closely. It feels like I know David's story really well, and I'd say that I would describe it as a story that makes sense. Of like, there's a progression there. It's like, yeah, that's logical, because it's something that he had strength in. He had good models that sort of headed him in that direction. I guess by way of contrast, I would call the reason why I became a maths teacher a story that doesn't make sense, because Carly, you're a history teacher. History and English were my favourite subjects at school. They were the ones I kind of just naturally tended towards, and I didn't mind maths. I certainly had excellent teachers who did a fantastic job explaining things very clearly, but it just kind of never gripped me, and it was just sort of there at the periphery. But when I arrived at university, I learnt about something we're probably going to come to later in the conversation, which is that for the last, 20 years, and I feel like it hasn't changed since then, there's been a critical shortage of mathematics educators in Australia, and I've since learned really all around the world. And when I realised that I could do something about that shortage, that this would be an area of need I could contribute to, I thought, well, you know what, I wasn't bad at maths at high school. I will give this a go. I'll struggle my way through it because that's the way I experienced it at school. And very much like David, I went through a huge transition in terms of at university and in my early years as a teacher. I guess I was really won over by, mathematics is the language of patterns. It's the language of solving problems, and that allows us to appreciate the world around us. And also, it enables us to function more effectively in our world when we understand all these numerical realities around us. So, being the person who, I guess, opens that door or unlocks that ability that children can then say, oh, this is part of the world that I can grapple with and can understand. It might be hard, but once I get there, I'm like, oh, this makes sense. That is just such a gratifying experience to be able to, and I'm sure, Dave's had the experience many times, when you teach a student and you see that moment of realization click in their mind, it's quite different to when I learn something in history and I think, oh, that's interesting, or, oh, that's surprising. In mathematics, it's like, oh, this makes sense of something I've experienced my entire life, but I've never known why. So I love seeing that all the time.